Good evening and welcome to our e-webinar organized by the IJOC. Tonight we are going to talk about stable security. And we have tonight some interesting guests. To start with the president of the International Jumping Riders Club, Kevin Stott, the FEI Honorary Chief Steward Jumping, Francis Heske-Jones, and the FEI Veterinary Director, Göran Ackerström. And I am Willem Luiten. Okay, probably you will all know these people, but I would like to give them the opportunity to tell something about themselves. Kevin, can you tell something about yourself?
Yeah, hi, good evening. I'm, as you say, the president of the IJOC, but I'm as well a rider. I'm riding for France. I'm based in Normandy, and yeah, I'm really happy to be part of this video.
Okay, thank you. Francis?
Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm Francis. Most of you will probably know me as a steward, but I'm also a level 4 jumping judge. I think like Kevin, we should have been and Göran, we should have been in Tokyo now, but we're not, we're at home and trying to get a few things done, which is nice. I live in Italy, but I'm actually in London now, and I've been here since the beginning of March because I'm sheltering with my 97-year-old mum, so I have to be here.
Okay, thank you, Francis. And Göran, you're from Sweden?
Thank you, Willem. Yes, I am. I'm a Swedish veterinarian, and I've been working and living in Lausanne for 5 years, but the last few months I've actually spent in Sweden. And some of you will know my wife. She's an FEI steward, and I've seen her more than I've done for more than 10 years now. So it's been a good part, if there's anything good with this COVID-19 situation.
Yes.
Thank you.
And thank God she's a steward, so she can manage at home with you.
Yes, she's well trained.
Okay, super.
As a steward.
Yes, thank you. Okay, let's start with the questions. As we now know that competitions are starting again in Europe and all over the world. Can you tell us also a little bit about your experiences after the 1st of July? Kevin, you've been to competitions already? Yeah,
I've been to competitions. I'm lucky that I'm a French rider and I'm based in France, and they organized a few 4-star and 5-star in Saint-Tropez and Grimaud. But I have to say it's really difficult time with for the organizers to try to keep on running the shows. We have many cancellation, what we can understand. We have still few 2-stars and really a little bit of 3-stars in Belgium and in Holland. But yeah, we have to support as well the organizers, because we can understand that the period is really difficult for them.
Okay, what are your experiences with COVID measurements that they do as an organizer?
I think they try to follow a bit, they completely follow the rules, but they have to follow the different rules coming and going out from one week to the other, and for the different countries as well. So they try to inform the riders and the people which are coming to the show just before from what they know. For example, we received an email for this weekend. We go in Belgium, and we know that it's it will be really strict. Because just riders and grooms are allowed to go there. We have to wear the mask everywhere. Just we are allowed not to wear the mask when we are riding. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but if we want to compete, we have to follow the rules. And I think it's really brave from them to still continue to organize, and even under rules which are really strict. But if our sport has to be like this for for a few months we have to be really aware and to follow everything if we want that the sport can continue.
Yes, okay. Francis, have you been to competitions already?
No, I actually have no personal experience of competing or being at competitions since we started again. I haven't officiated, but I have heard from several colleagues who have been doing events, and they've described similar, but also at the same time quite differing scenarios. Some events have implemented very strict guidelines with the use of masks or visors, sanitizers, limitation of the number of people and horses that can come into the warm-up and the training arenas, prize-giving protocols, social distancing, signage at the venue, and compliance is also monitored at some of these events. Others have told me that things are a little more relaxed, the approach is a little more relaxed, but of course we do have to remember that each country has introduced different laws and different guidelines for life in general and sport in particular, and of course these have to be taken into consideration. In any event, the impact that the virus has had, is having, and will have on our sport in particular and life in general is undeniable, and the knock-on effects will probably be felt for quite some time to come.
Yes, okay, thank you. Göran, have you been to shows already?
I haven't been to any FEI shows. I was to one of those, how should I call it, training events that was held in Belgium, and there were certainly measures to some extent there, but I understand now that the Belgian restrictions are much harder. From FEI headquarter perspective, we follow this very closely, and it's of course very clear that many, especially the high-level events, have cancelled, and the events that we see, especially in jumping, there would be 1, 2, and some 3-star events, but a lot of 1 and 2 stars, which is interesting, but it also means that the restrictions in regards of starters are not in place. And if you have a lot of people wanting to compete, which is natural now, of course, because those are the only available events, there will be an increased need for officials, stables, fencing, etc. And it's quite obvious that this may be challenging for some OCs to manage. But there are also positive things from a veterinary perspective. I'm a biosecurity geek, and I see the positive sides of increased awareness of biosecurity and the tremendous increase of hand wash that will actually protect our horses, hopefully for years ahead, that people will remain washing hands, and especially Equine herpes virus, strangles, etc. will be actually very well prevented by good hand washing routines.
Okay, thank you, Göran. Okay, all the organizations are focusing on COVID-19 measurements because there's a big risk if you don't comply. But there are also other risks for an organizer and for competitors and officials. And one of the risks that there is the topic of tonight. It's about stable security and, as I can say, insufficient stable security. What are your experiences on stable security during the shows? Francis, you as a steward, could you give us some experiences from you, the level of the quality?
Yes, of course. But firstly, I would just like to differentiate by the traditional understanding of stable security, as in the perimeter fencing, the control of access at the entry points, and security as in safety for everyone, including the horses, actually inside the stable area. They're two slightly different things. The principal risk of insufficient, or one of the principal risks of insufficient stable security, is of course the entry of unauthorized people into the stable area itself. And this is something that does concern me. If the control at the access points is not as it should be, because it presents for me, it presents a significant potential liability for organizers if unauthorized people are in the stables. Like, for example, I have seen, this was a very long time ago, but I have seen families who should not have been in the stables, families with very young children, toddlers and kids in babies in prams. And if they access the stable area without actually having the authorization according to the rules to do so, and there unfortunately should be an accident, I believe that this would have potentially have a very negative impact on the organizer's insurance, third-party insurance. Mm-hmm. So I think from that point of view, it's very important that people who do not have the authorization to enter into the stable should not enter. And of course, we know that in the vet regs, it's very specific who may and who may not enter the stable area. It's also important to remember that for everybody who is in the stable area, the rules and regulations do have to be respected. And again, if unauthorized people are in the stables, they don't know what the rules are. And so there is a risk that merely because they want to get close to some horses, they will go up, they will pat them, they might touch the equipment. And of course, we have no idea where these people have been, what medications they're taking. So Euron obviously will have greater knowledge than I do of this, but there is a potential risk of cross-contamination, not through intentional behavior, but because they simply don't know. It's completely unintentional. Okay. So for me, it's very, very important that stable security in the traditional sense of having strong perimeter fencing and very effective access controls is something that is implemented at all levels of events, not just at the top level, where generally speaking, the stable security is better, but also at the lower level events, because you will get more people coming in who are just out for the day and might say, oh, come on, let's go and see the horses. And they go in and things can happen and it's not good.
Okay, thank you, Francis. Kevin, you've been recently to competitions.
Yeah, I think Frances said nearly everything. It was really clear. But for sure, I mean that for the higher level, you have less horses, less riders. Stable security is really well done there. I also can understand, especially right now, that we have few shows, not as many as we hoped, and not enough for every rider. So the 2 stars or the 3 stars which are organized right now take a lot of horses and a lot of riders, and maybe a bit too many, and the infrastructure has to be bigger. So they build some stables, maybe not in the area which is easy to secure. So I have to say, it doesn't matter what you want to organize. If you want to take many horses, many riders, I don't speak about the sport part, just about stable security. You have to be sure that you can secure every single stable of your show, and to limit the access and to control everything. Otherwise, it will be a big mess, and we will have some trouble, because too many people unauthorized will come in, and it will start to be impossible to control them. So the only thing I know that right now the business for the 2 stars and the 3 stars is to get as many entries as possible. I really follow this, but doesn't mean that you can't secure your stables. You have really to be aware that it doesn't matter how many horses you take. you have to follow the rules and to be able to deliver the best stable security.
Okay. Göran, how vital is stable security in your opinion as FEI veterinary director?
It's absolutely critical, and I can only concur with what Kevin and Francis has very well explained. You have the issues for of course an increased risk of contamination, but also biosecurity, because as Francis said, you don't know where these people have been before. Have they been in a stable at home where they had abortions, etc., that could be induced by herpes virus that could affect other horses and create a spread, strangles, etc., and have they washed their hands, and so on and so on. But if we just look at the current situation, we have received reports that it's not functional at all events, and we're actually following up on a couple of cases now that will be addressed with the OCs in a very near future. Mm-hmm. So it's obvious that we need to be on top of this, and it's absolute priority that we can do that. Mm-hmm. I think we will come back to it several times during this webinar, but it's extremely important with stable security for many aspects.
Okay, thank you, Göran. If you had the opportunity to improve stable security, what would be your top 3 of recommendations, Kevin? If you were a boss or an organizer, what would you do to improve stable security?
So first, it's to limit the access as much as you can. I don't want to be extreme, but riders and grooms for sure. And then the second point, it's to be sure about the people you allow to come. And I'm the first one sometimes on my accreditation, when the owners are not coming, you put a friend on, we have to stop this. We have to really restrict the access of the stables to the owners who can prove that they are owning the horse. It's the names on the passport, or they can make a certificate that they are owning, even if we have to do that every single show. I think it's really important. Mm-hmm. And the partner and the groom. Okay, so we know that right now we have 2 access per horse for the owners and 1 for the partner. I think it's well restricted, but sometimes we use this access to other people, or we exchange. I know it's a real business in our rider situation, and I'm the first one to do that. But if we want really to be fair, we have to limit to the people which are allowed, and not to give the access to friends or to other. After, we can meet our families or our friends at another place in the show. I don't mean not to have access to the show, but to the stables, if we want to have really well done stable security, really restricted access. So I have no top 3, I have just the top 2, and it's that, and I think it's really important to focus on this.
Okay, thank you. Göran?
For me,
top 3.
Thank you. So first of all, and it shouldn't have to be discussed, but obviously it's needed, and that is that all OCs comply to the veterinary regulations on stable security, and they should give their veterinary services manager the opportunity and resources to prepare stable security, and we will educate those. That is 1. 2 is that, and this I turn to the officials, reports must reflect reality. Mm-hmm. If there's a lack of fencing, it must be reported. Final, no discussion. And also, thank you, Kevin, for raising that item. You kind of took it from me, but I really appreciate it, and that is that riders and their entourage must take the responsibility and follow the regulations that are set up. For example, by not inviting too many people to the stable, not taking the shortcut through the fence, keeping the dogs on leash, etc. So,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Göran. And Francis, do you still have 3 or?
Oh yes, I do.
Okay.
I actually have 4 or 5, but I'll try and limit myself.
Okay.
I'll steal one from Kevin because he only had 2, so I'm going to take an extra one, if I may. So yeah, to improve stable security in the traditional sense, apart from, for me, what is the obvious benefit of, if possible, having some form of CCTV. I think in our, I won't say our post-COVID world, because I don't believe we are post-COVID yet, but let's say one of the lessons I think we have learned from COVID, which Göran very briefly or very accurately brought up, is that I think it would be good now if we had some form of hand sanitizing at the entrance, at every access point to the stables, because this would start to diminish the germs that we're all carrying into the stables. Perhaps each stable block should have something at the end of each stable aisle. Yes, we need to have effective fencing around the whole area that really is a deterrent to unauthorized access. We can't just have something that's 1.20 meters high. We need to have proper, tall, 1.80 meters Harris or plus or whatever fencing. I think it's very important that the security personnel is correctly briefed, because a lot of the time they don't really know what they're supposed to be doing. So for me, it's very important that the chief steward ensures that the security personnel is correctly briefed and that they are effective. They need to be effective. They need to be strong enough to say, I'm very sorry, but you can't come in. But they also have to do this politely. So it's quite a big ask, to be fair. And lastly, I think it's very important that there is a more generalized understanding and acceptance on the part of all stakeholders that good, stable security is essential. And it's especially important that organizing committees understand the importance and that they do implement it accordingly. OCs need to understand that it is something that they really do have to do to protect the horses.
Okay.
So sorry, I have maybe more than 3.
Yeah, okay. For the good listener and the good viewer, maybe more than 4 or 3, but doesn't matter. They are all recommendations which we can use. If we all agree on that the stable should be clean, that's also very important, I think, and give horses the possibility to rest during after the competitions. What is then your opinion on media tours and sponsor tours during the show in the stables? Göran?
Thank you, Willem. So for the horse, the stable fills an equivalent function as an hotel room for a human athlete. And I can rarely see media sponsor tours in the hotel rooms of human athletes ever. And horses make our sport truly unique. And it's important that we actually show the world how well these horses are taken care of. But in order to ensure the rest of the horses by security, minimize the risk of contamination, etc., the numbers of tours, the size of those tours, and the time they go on, it should be kept to an absolute minimum. They need to be well organized. They need to include chaperoning by stewards, not just the OC. And the vet delegate and the chief steward should always be consulted in advance. And if they see risk, they should be able to just stop it immediately to avoid any risks for the horses.
Okay, thank you. Francis, media comes in and they want to make films and make a lot of noise. How do you react when you're a chief steward?
Well, firstly, I would like to thank you, Joran. You pinched a lot of my points, so thank you for that one. But it's good that we are in agreement on that. Media and sponsor requests for access to the stable area probably more happen at the higher end of the events. You don't really see it that much in the standalone 1 or 2 or even 3-star events. I fully understand and appreciate the importance of sponsors and media having a certain amount of access to the stables, because especially I know this because I've done media tours, sponsor tours with in the stables in places like, for example, Hong Kong, and the sponsors have no idea what is actually involved in bringing horses halfway across the world, and it's very it's actually fascinating for them. And I think if it can help in their understanding and perhaps their appreciation, and perhaps even push them to or encourage them to keep sponsoring events, because we need sponsors. I also understand why media likes to have access to the stables. However, these are for completely different reasons. The reasons sponsors want to come in and media wants to come in are two completely different things. In my opinion, media must never have unrestricted and unmonitored access to the stables. This simply does not work. If there are special requests, and this can include sponsor tours, for me, it's essential that these are structured and carefully planned so that they do not interfere with the grooms when they're preparing the horses for competition, or perhaps when the horses are just coming back from exercise. They need their space, they need their own access. It can't interfere with the rider's mental preparation before big classes, especially, or with the fact that for the riders, it's a safe place where nobody can come and bother them. So the fact, if they're hounded by journalists the whole time, that's not too great either. But above all, it's a question of allowing the horses to rest and to relax. It's very, very important. Whatever the opinion of the organizing committee, a steward must always be present to ensure that the rules are followed. And of course, in the event of anything unforeseen, it can be an incident, it can be an emergency, the steward is then able to lead the sponsor party or the media out of the stables or away from the area. One of the reasons, if I may, where it's very important that media doesn't have unfettered access is because if media is in the stables, we don't know what they're photographing or filming. And for us, it's perfectly acceptable for a horse to be on fluids. There might be a reason that the horse has to be on fluids. But of course, if somebody from the media comes in and starts filming horses on fluids, we have no control over that, none at all. And I think it's very important that any media that is, or media reporting or photographs or videos that are coming out of the stables, we have to know what they're doing so that we do have some control over the message that's being sent out. So that's my opinion anyway.
Okay, thank you, Francis. Kevin, you're a very successful rider, and I do think that you get a lot of requests from media. How do you handle them when they ask you, when they want to make a report in the stables?
Honestly, I was lucky enough that every time a media asks for an interview, whatever, and want to have a horse close to me, or we are doing this in the practice arena at a time that it's really free, that not so many riders are coming, and I don't have many asks from interviews in the stables. What I like when I'm the last one to speak, it's everything is already said by the others. So thank you, it was really interesting and true, Francis and Goran. Yeah, medias, it's really dangerous to have unrestricted access to the stables, because Francis explained that really well. We are trying to give the best work on the horses. They have to be quiet. They have to. We can't really go in the way of the really restricted access, and at the opposite to say, yeah, for sure, every day we will bring some media, some sponsors, and I think for sure we want to make a good promotion of our sport. We want to open a little bit the doors to see what's happening behind it, but stables are not really the place to do this. Rooms need to be really relaxed to give the best work on the horses. So yeah, I should answer to Goran who say that I'm sure that it's more sponsors and media who are visiting the riders' hotel room that I would like to have them in the stables. So yeah, it's not the place to be, and it's some exception, but it has to stay like this.
Okay.
Willem, may I just add one quick tip for my colleagues, for our colleagues?
Yes.
If you are approached when you're stewarding, or if you're the chief steward, if you are approached by media and they come and say, oh, we're going to be interviewing Kevin in the stables at 3 o'clock this afternoon, check with Kevin first and see whether this is effectively the case, because often the rider has no idea at all that this is going to happen, and it's just a pretext to get into the stables.
Okay.
Right, Kevin?
Yeah, exactly.
They're just like humans, the media. Okay, I would also like to thank Göran for the comparison of these are the hotel rooms of our horses. So when I'm officiating and I'm in my hotel room, I don't want to have media or other people in my hotel room. That's very nice. Okay, then of course this is an e-webinar of the IJOC, the Officials Club, and what is the role of the official regarding stable security? Because more and more officials are financial depending on invitations of shows. There is a rider's report, there is a foreign steward report, there is a veterinary report. A lot of reports are written, but it's also, if you write something not so favorable about a show or an organizer, you have the risk that you will not be asked to come next year again as official. What's your opinion on that? And I would like to ask Frances to give her first answer.
Of course, it can happen that officials who are frequently invited by the same organizing committee can find themselves in a delicate situation if, for whatever reason, issues have to be reported that might reflect poorly on the organizing committee. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's only normal to think, if I report this, I might not get invited again. But as FEI officials, we effectively represent the FEI at any given event. And the FEI entrusts us with responsibilities. And sometimes these can be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. However, we are the FEI's eyes and ears. And for example, the riders or the grooms expect us to be fair and to be objective. Part of this fairness and objectivity must include reporting when things go wrong or haven't met the standards that would be expected or are acceptable. If this does happen, in my mind, it's really essential to sit with, let's say, the event director and have a discussion about what will be going into the report, so that he or she doesn't receive an unpleasant surprise a month or so down the road if there's a letter from the FEI asking why such and such a thing happened. Yeah. It's also very important not only to present criticism, it has to be constructive criticism. Okay. And present some possible solutions, instead of just saying this was bad. Present some A, B, C, D. You could think of this, and also remember there will have been some good points about the event as well. So make sure that you emphasize these. After that, if you don't get back invited again, if you don't get invited back again, that's not necessarily always such a bad thing. If you have done the right thing, so be it.
Yeah, it would also be helpful if you write a report and you have some recommendations, that the guy who's coming next year, or the girl who's coming next year, that he could see the report and see what improvements already have been made. So that you also can make a compliment to the organizer if he shows improvements on points that were open for improvement.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Kevin, what kind of stewards do you like?
Sorry?
What kind of stewards do you like?
For me, I like a fair sport and to respect the welfare of the horses. So for sure, it has to be strict. Rules has to be followed. So I'm not scared to have a steward who knows his job perfectly. Who can speak. The communication is really important for sure between a steward and a rider. But also, if we are wrong, the steward has to tell us. It's if stewards are nominated to come to a show, it's for a reason, and the reason it's to follow and to be sure that the sport will be done under rules. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. And Göran, on this topic, officials not reporting, you already mentioned in your opening statement, I think.
Yeah, I stuck my head out further. So, and I'll continue with that. So we have really reviewed this carefully, and we had reasons to do so because of all the issues that we had in the endurance discipline. And you would have some of the most conscious and most professional veterinary officials that we had all over the world. They were never invited. They were blocked out from many of the major events. So that is of course much worse than anything that we've seen in jumping. But the main problem, I believe, is in the appointment system. And it's the way it's working now in endurance following the introduction of new endurance rules is that on the top officials at high level events are always appointed by the FAI. And this allows the best ones to actually be, that they will be then appointed where they are best needed. And it's and they are very supportive of this, of course, and it was an absolutely necessary step to take. I'm not saying that the issues they're not even close in jumping and other disciplines. However, appointments are important for some levels of officials, especially those that write reports. I can give an example. Testing vets and examining vets, those that do limb sensitivity, they are appointed and remunerated by the FAI veterinary department. And the funds come from the DCMP fees. And this system works really well. The reports are spot on. If there are issues at an event, sometimes the only report that will raise the issues are the reports from the testing vet. And I think at some stage it would be interesting to consider this kind of system as a benchmark for certain positions of officials at some levels, the most sensitive ones, just to ensure that we have the level of improvement. And I completely concur with the really constructive messages from Francis and from Kevin on those other topics. But I think this is something that may have to be looked at in the future to really reach the full compliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Göran. Okay, we're now at the end of our e-webinar about stable security. I would like to thank you all, but before I do that, we can conclude that stable security, as Francis said, is essential for an organizer. It's a big risk if you have an insufficient stable security. So riders, officials, veterinarians, I do still miss an organizer in this group, but I do think there is room for improvement, and that's a challenge that we have to take. So Francis, thank you very much. Göran, thank you very much. And of course, Kevin, thank you very much, and success in competing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye. Bye.